In this video, I am going to attempt to explain conditional lookups. This is a rather complex topic, and I will do my best to cover it in the 15 minutes that I can record. If I don't make it, I'll try again or give it another video. Conditional lookups enable you to do things like define a set of fields that are dependent on each other. So we have one that we've set up for job family and job code. If I go into a resource record and I look, and this is in a restricted tab, so most people can't see it, but if I look at the job family attribute and do a search on it and select something like architect, then the job code drop down only contains the job codes that are pertinent to that job family. And if I change the job family to something different, like informatics, then I get a different set of job codes that go with that job family. If I don't have a job family, then I get all 40 available job codes. So that's called a conditional lookup. There are a number of things that have to be in place in order for this to work. And they're all interrelated and they're all a little bit odd, so bear with me as I step through them. First of all, you need to define these attributes on the resource record. But because they're of type lookup, you can't define the attribute until you've built the lookups. The lookups are different than the norm. Job family is pretty straightforward. It's a static list, and you probably already know how to do a static list. Job code is a dynamic lookup, which means there's a query associated with it. So let's look at each of these in turn. So if I look at job family, the job family has a set of values and it's nothing unusual. So you can add new values to this. When you add new values, those values will show up in that initial drop down here, but there won't be anything associated with it until you do something else, which I'm getting to. And the resource record, you would then go in and create the job family attribute and associate it with the appropriate job family lookup. The stuff down at the bottom is normal. Whenever you create something from a lookup that has multiple values, you can define a display mapping. I'm not quite sure why we have them mapped in this way, except that they all fall into the default bucket. This is useful when you have things like low, medium, high. You can give red, amber, green, but in this case it doesn't matter, so you can ignore that part. You also then can define the job code. Now this is where it gets a little bit more complex, because as we saw, the job code is dependent upon the job family. The job code lookup, if I can find it, there it is a dynamic query. If we look at the query, and looking into queries is a little bit beyond the scope of what I normally will cover, but in this case, there's a couple things you can see. The query is grabbing a child value ID and child descriptive name from a table called ODFCA-AZ conditional lookups, or cond lookups. So that's a table that's generated from a custom attribute that a custom object that we've built. So it's selecting values from that table where the lookup ID is job code and a parameter is equal to the job family. This query you don't need to understand in totality. If you ever need to create a brand new conditional lookup with new fields, what you'll have to do is replicate this query for whatever new attribute you're creating and modify a couple of things within it, mainly the lookup ID and the name of what you're searching for, in this case job family. Because this is defined, this query is defined as having a parameter, which is what that does for you. If you use this query and define a lookup, and then you go to create an attribute using that lookup, which I've got to go back and find, where did I put it? Here it is. So now I'm going to look at the job code attribute created from the job code lookup. And because the job code lookup has a parameter in the query, on this screen, when you're creating the attribute, there's a lookup parameter section. In the lookup parameter section, you need to specify which field is the parameter for this particular lookup. So in this case, I want to use job family. So again, the job family is the upper level, job code is the lower level. So depending upon what's in job family, that's going to dictate what values are available in the job code, which is how we get back to this scenario where I've got architect here, and that gives me only these three values of architect. So given that that's already set up, the more normal thing that's going to happen is you may have a need to go in and add another value. So perhaps I want a new value for architect. So I want 4 things in here instead of 3. So where do I add those? Well, normally when you add things to a lookup, you would go to the lookup and put it in there. So normally on job family, you can simply click new and add a new job family. Piece of cake. I've got architect, I could add a new one. So that's very normal. When you want to add a new value to the child lookup, that's where we have to use this new custom object, the conditional lookup object. So if I go to the home screen and I go to the home menu and I look at this next button, I come out here to custom objects and I find a list of conditional lookups. So if I look at that, I've got a whole bunch of these. I've got 424 instances of a conditional lookup object. The vast majority of them are for our old friend site impact, locations impacted, which has never been bottomed out. But we have a multi-conditional lookup there where we've got region, country, and site. So it's kind of expanded and even more complex than the job family thing. So for right now, we're just going to focus on the job family. So if I search for job under lookup ID, here are all the instances of conditional lookups that are related to job code. So I've got a lookup ID, I've got a parent lookup value ID, a child lookup value ID, and a child description. When you select a particular job family and then you choose for the job code, the job code query is looking through all of these objects to find any entries where the lookup ID is job code, because you don't want sites and countries showing up in the drop down for job family. So it looks for a lookup ID of job code. Then it looks for the parent lookup value ID equal to whatever you selected in the job family attribute. And when it finds a match on these two fields, then it picks up whatever value is over here and returns those in this dropdown. So what you can see here on the conditional lookup page, I've got 3 entries for architect, and I've got the corresponding 3 for 14, 13, and 12 that you see over here. So if I wanted to create a new job code that goes with the architect job family, I would have to create a new conditional lookup. When I do that, I give it a name and an ID. We don't care about those. They're just required by clarity. So I'm going to just call them 999 and 999. You can call them anything you want. It doesn't matter. What matters is these next 4 fields. So the lookup ID here, I have to put job code, because that will tell the job code lookup query which objects, which instances of the conditional lookup object I want to pick from. So I don't want region, I don't want site, I don't want country, I want job codes. So anything that has a lookup ID of job code, the query will find, because that's what it does right there. Lookup ID equals job code. So I have to put job code here. Then for the parent lookup value ID, I'm going to put architect. So I can put the ID of any one of those job families in the parent. The child lookup ID is what you get to create. So I'm going to create a new architect, and I'm going to give it a value ID of JKI 999, and I'm going to give this an awesome architect. The bottom ones are only for site entries. We have tried to make latitude and longitude part of the Clarity data so that we can export it to QlikView and map it. So you can ignore those for now. So I'm going to save and return. I've now created a brand new conditional lookup, and there it is. The lookup ID is job code. The parent lookup ID, value ID is architect, and there's my ID and my description. So now if I go back over to my resource record and I refresh this so that it picks up the new value, if I go in here and say architect and I drop this down, there's my new entry, the awesome architect. So if you need to add a new entry to this bottom drop down, you have to go to conditional lookups, create a new conditional lookup, make sure you map it to the right lookup ID, give it the right parent ID, and then create what you want. So hopefully that will get you through creating any new values in these conditional lookups. Obviously, if I want to create a new job family, all I need to do is go to the job family lookup and click new, and then I'll need to create new children by going back to conditional lookups and doing new ones here that will map to that new parent value. If you need to create brand new conditional attributes, linked attributes like this, you will need to first create the lookup for the lower level one, which is the job code. So wherever it went, you'll need to create this query, create this lookup. Then you'll need to create the upper level lookup, and then you'll need to create the attributes job code and job family in this example. And if you do the query correctly, you'll see the parameter down here, and you'll need to create the upper level. You have to create the upper level attribute first, because that becomes the parameter for the lower level attribute. And once you've done all that, then you'll need to go in and populate the conditional lookup list with all of the values that you want to see for the children. So I hope that helps. If not, I don't know what to tell you because it ain't documented anywhere. And the last time I had to do this, I had to meticulously work through it. And it was more complex because we did region, country, site. So I had a 3-level conditional lookup instead of 2. And it literally took me days and days to decipher it and then to implement it with 3 levels. So not simple, but hopefully the maintenance of it is fairly straightforward. Now that you know everything I know about it, we might rock.